welcome to the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky, Culture Editor here at The Federalist. As always, you can email the show at radio@thefederalist.com. I'm coming to you today from Washington, D.C., where I'm joined by my colleagues, Tristan Justice, staff writer at The Federalist, and Jordan Davidson, staff writer at The Federalist. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us, Emily.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. So to sort of kick things off and introduce this discussion, we should start by saying one of America's most iconic, most symbolic pop stars is currently enveloped in a mystery. And it's a mystery that's playing out in real time in social media and even in courtrooms. I'm talking about the FreeBritney hashtag. The FreeBritney movement really is what it's become. I'm going to start with Tristan. Both of you guys have done some coverage of this and some reporting on it. Tristan, can you tell us where this started?
Yeah, absolutely. So Britney Spears has now been in a conservatorship under her father and attorney for more than 10 years now. And it really all started in 2008. Britney Spears had a number of high-profile breakdowns. And so she was put into, at first, what was a temporary conservatorship that after a few months became a permanent one. A conservatorship really, just so our viewers know, is an arrangement that's usually reserved for people who are severely mentally incapacitated or physically incapacitated, people who can't take care of themselves, usually old people with dementia. But Britney Spears was put under one after having a series of mental breakdowns and high-profile episodes where just a lot of erratic behavior warranted this arrangement at first. But now, ever since then, this conservatorship has now played out over a 12-year span. And the FreeBritney movement has always been around since then, but it's back in the news now because there's another hearing next week for her conservatorship to be extended now. So that's where we are right now in the movement. And so the FreeBritney movement has really picked up steam as just more and more has come out by people around her discussing the details of the circumstances and how the conservatorship has really been really harmful for Britney.
Well, so people might be curious as to why we're discussing this particular incident on the Federalist Radio Hour podcast. And I think we're doing it because it says a lot about the state of American media. It says a lot about fame. And because Britney Spears, if we go back to the late 90s, she's like Jessica Simpson, this virginal symbol of the American girl next door. And to sort of watch what is happening to her and what has been happening to her for more than a decade, I mean, really 2 decades, if you go all the way back to the beginning, I think when we dig into it, tells us a lot about our culture. And there's this added layer also of the fact that this is really a mystery. And so I'm gonna kick to Jordan. I'm curious about the mystery element of this because there's sort of been the FreeBritney, there have been voicemails left on podcasters' lines. A lot of this has been uncovered. A lot of what we call the FreeBritney hashtag is stuff that online sleuths, hardcore Britney Spears fans are digging into themselves on the internet. And this adds another layer of why it's important to our kind of cultural conversations, because there are now these armies of fans that congregate together in online spaces and work to manipulate public perception or manipulate media coverage of their preferred star. You can refer to them as stans. But the absolutely fascinating part of our cultural ecosystem right now, our social media ecosystem right now. So Jordan, can you talk to us a little bit about the online sleuthing element of this and some of the mystery element of why Britney Spears is under a conservatorship and, these clues that people think she's sort of dropping as she goes along?
Sure. Well, one of the first things to mention is that it's just fantastic how long this process has been. Like Tristan said, this process has been over a decade long, and this FreeBritney movement has continued to pick up steam, not only in just regular media, but social media. And so one of the most recent things was a social media hashtag that re-rose, hashtag FreeBritney, and fans began commenting on Britney's social media, asking her if she needed help, if she was trapped in this conservatorship, if it was something she wanted. And they would ask her for specific things like wear a yellow shirt in your next video, or post a picture of this kind of flower. And things happened on her social media. There was a response, and not a direct one, but one of her next posts had her in a yellow shirt talking about some ad that she was doing. And fans went absolutely insane over this. They think that it's a call for help and that she's trapped in here. And so a lot of people have rallied around this movement. Even people who weren't necessarily close to the fandom before have joined in, and even an official White House petition has begun circulating at the end of July and the beginning of the summer, kind of trying to gain steam for this, to get more attention than it already has over the last decade, and to really show people what's going on. And so a lot of this investigation, like you said, has involved people on podcasts and devoting entire blogs and websites to this, just digging into these legal things and speculating via social media posts. And the Spears family has come out against these and said, you know, you don't understand the full story. Things, you know, are different than what they may seem, but fans continue to pursue the issue and continue to ask Britney for these clues on her social media.
Yeah, so you just touched on what I wanted to ask about, and we can open up this conversation to both of you. So one of those clues, and I think probably to this day, one of those most puzzling clues that we have to consider is a comment that Britney Spears' mother left on an Instagram picture. Am I right about that?
Yeah,
Tristan.
and we know that Britney's mother we know that Britney's mother has been going on social media and liking different posts for the Free Britney movement. We know Britney's parents are divorced, and we know that Britney and even her father has admitted that the relationship between conservatorship, where all her freedom is given up to her father. So her mom is now actively in this movement trying to free her daughter from this conservatorship on Britney.
Right. And so what people are seeing basically is, you know, and am I also right that other celebrities have kind of liked posts about the Free Britney movement, right? Jordan, you're nodding. Is that correct?
Yeah, so multiple celebrities have shared the hashtag, or kind of, they've stayed away from the legal weeds of it, but definitely joined the social media movement part, liking the hashtag, sharing it, just saying that they support her through her career changes and anything else that's happened over the last 10 years.
So basically what we have is one of the world's most famous pop stars, who is also famously troubled, is at the very least torn between her father, with whom she's under a conservatorship, and her mother, who supports these efforts to sort of free her, which means that people close to her have different opinions about, you know, how she should live her life and what her legal status should be. And her legal status, of course, says a lot about her mental status. If people close to her think she doesn't need this conservatorship and it's overly restrictive, then, you know, we can perhaps assume that maybe she's you know, capable of taking care of herself. And if people close to her think she needs a conservatorship, you know, that would imply they think she's not able to take care of herself. But it could also mean a couple of different things. Now, what are the benefits to Britney Spears' father of keeping her under a conservatorship? What would the motivation be to keep her under a conservatorship? Because that could mean, you know, that could really undermine the implication that he thinks, you know, her father thinks that she needs this legal setup. So what's in it for him, Tristan?
Right, exactly. You know, it's a really fascinating setup because, like you said at the beginning, it's really mysterious. This entire conservatorship is really mysterious, but the motives and the incentives here are actually really clear. We know from a number of leaks from people close to Britney and close to the situation, like the paralegal who left a voicemail for a podcaster, just kind of laying out how Britney, she doesn't want to be in this conservatorship. She's being taken advantage of in this conservatorship, and how this conservatorship is actually really more harmful for Britney than it is helpful. But the motives for the family to keep her in this conservatorship are, or at least the incentives are, really clear, because the family has, I mean, her father has to say in all of Britney's finances. So this is a Britney's, of course, worth millions and millions of dollars, but she doesn't have any say over how to spend it. In fact, she gets, I think her allowance is like, from what I've read and heard, $1,500 a week. This is a multi-million-dollar worldwide superstar who doesn't have any say in her own finances because her family has this conservatorship. So really for the last decade, Britney made her family a fortune. She went on four world tours. She did a 4-year Las Vegas residency. She released multiple albums. She guest starred at How I Met Your Mother. She guest hosted. She was a full-time host on. She was.
Are you just going in this list? She did 4 world tours. She guest starred on How I Met Your Mother.
This is, and what's insane is that this is, I mean, with someone at she's 26 years old at this level of productivity, the idea that she can't take care of herself.
36 years old, right?
Well, I think now she is, but I think she went. Yeah. I think she went into the conservatorship when she was 26. So
okay.
All throughout, the last 12 years, someone at that level of productivity, it doesn't sound like someone who can't take care of themselves. And we've also seen people come out like her photographer who read a note from Britney, how she wants out of this conservatorship, that she already gives her family so much money. And so now we've just reached a point where, and we have this hearing coming up on next Saturday, that's August 22nd. So it's really coming up. But Britney right now, she's not working and there's really no need to. Why work when you can't not have any say over your own money? And she's already made her family filthy rich. So the incentives are really here. Her father needs her money. Her staff needs her money. And even her sister, who's not helping her get out of the conservatorship because her sister, she needs the money too. So the incentives are clear, but we know from a lot of people close to Britney and really intimately familiar with the details of the conservatorship have come out and kind of been whistleblowers in a sense, discussing how the family is dependent on it and they're abusing it.
Yeah, her dad is just dependent on that sweet, sweet How I Met Your Mother money. I'm sorry, I can't get over that you threw that into this list of very impressive accomplishments. And she guest starred on How I Met Your Mother. So some of these stakeholders, you just mentioned her sister, Jamie Lynn Spears, who's famous in her own right. She is not involved in the Free Britney movement. She is not left any Easter eggs. She's not interested in this at all. Is that correct?
Right, but her sister is not involved, but her sister's been famous, but her sister still lives in Britney's shadow, absolutely, because Britney is a global superstar.
I'm sorry, did you not watch Zoe 101?
I do not actually.
Wow, well that explains why you think How I Met Your Mother is the pinnacle of television.
But no, her sister though, she's famous in her own right, but nowhere near the level of Britney. So her sister still, I think, has a huge incentive to run off of Britney's money. The fact that Britney's mom is involved in the Free Britney movement, but not her sister, I think definitely says something. Well,
her mom is divorced. So I was going to say, from her father. Yeah. So what do we know about but does her mom not benefit from the conservatorship arrangement? Does her mom not benefit from the estate? What do we know about the financial, to the extent that we're able to, what do we know about the financial arrangement, either of you, Tristan or Jordan?
At the beginning of her conservatorship, a lot of the power was granted to her father and her attorney. And throughout the last 10 years, there have been some shifts in that, actually giving her father more power in the finances and in other areas. So not only is it a financially motivated situation, but it comes down to even the control part of the situation, where her father's been granted the ability to restrict who she can and can't associate with and who can come to their home and that sort of thing. So these powers have been shifted from not only financial, but they've kind of reached into this control area of who can she even date. And there's a lot of speculation about what the motivation or why her father would want to do that. And her mom doesn't really have a say in any of that because the legal backing has been mostly behind the father and the attorney.
Wait a minute. There are legal restrictions on who she can date. Tristan, is that accurate?
Yeah, from my understanding, the conservatorship extends to who Britney can even see on a daily basis. Britney really, it's interesting. Everyone's been in this kind of isolated lockdown quarantine mode for months now from the pandemic, but it's really almost like Britney has been experiencing this for 12 years because her father has the final say and everyone Britney sees and everyone Britney talks to and every business deal Britney makes and everything. Britney can't drive a car. If she does drive a car, she has to have someone with her. She has someone with her all the time. She can't post freely on social media. Her posts are monitored and censored. So from my understanding, that seems to be true.
So that's, obviously that's remarkable. I'm wondering, like, let's talk about her social media, because her social media accounts have been, her Instagram, I should say, particularly, and she's on TikTok as well, but these accounts have been interesting, and I think they've sort of they're maybe the most important part of this entire mystery, because there's something off when you're watching these videos that she posts. Am I wrong? There's something off with her.
No, there definitely is.
I think so.
Yeah, she seems, but the question, I think that's what intrigues people about this, because there are hardcore Britney Spears fans who look at this like incredibly successful artist whose work they enjoy, and they see her on social media in these videos. And we can talk about the infamous gym burning video, but they see her in these videos and she seems sort of glossy eyed and distant, and they're very funny, because she is funny, but they're not the sort of like energetic, personality that you might expect from her. So do you think, do either of you think this is a big part of what draws people to the Free Britney mystery, is simply the personality she projects on her social media accounts, which, as you say, are monitored?
I absolutely think it plays a part. And when you go from being someone who is this massive performer who has reached audiences all around the world, exudes this confidence of being a pop star in the early 2000s, to being someone who's extremely physically thin and has this vague look in her eyes, just kind of this faraway thing, it kind of puts off a different air than what you see on television. And it makes people question and speculate, why is this happening? And so I think that's why a lot of that traction has gained with that hashtag, and the people even dropping hints or asking her to drop hints. I think a lot of that comes from this, what she's producing on social media looks so different than what you would normally expect from a confident pop star celebrity type.
Right, and it almost seems like, if you're looking for the clues, it almost seems like she's trying to say something, but she can't, because the social media is monitored. Tristan, can you tell us about the gym burning video?
Yeah, so I think it was originally an Instagram post. It was either Instagram or TikTok, but she posted a video where she's talking about working out, and she says it so nonchalantly too. She goes, "I'm not in my gym because I burnt my gym down. I burned it down. I just burned it down." and it was so off the cuff, and it ended up being, she burned it out with the candle. She had some candle lit in there, and then the candle started to fire, and then her own gym just burned down. In the video, it was a bizarre video to watch, because you could just see Britney just looked depressed in just about most of her pictures and videos too. You can see she just looks depressed.
Low energy.
And I can't help but to low, absolutely, almost medicated to a degree. I know there's been some rumors out there. I haven't seen hard evidence of this or anything, but there's rumors out there in Britney Spears that she's being given medication that she doesn't necessarily need, because she's been in and out of the psychiatric ward. And so, I mean, in her videos, it kind of does look like she's medicated a little bit. I mean, you could just see it in her eyes. So that could have been a part of it too.
Right. And yeah, I was going to say, do you guys know anything else about the medication theories? Because it does, I'm wildly uncomfortable speculating on the mental health of any public figure, whether it's, Donald Trump or Britney Spears, or, even like someone like Flava Flav. But I do think the drug theories are a big part of I'm actually just right now wondering where the hell I came up with Flavor Flav, just off the cuff like that. This is interesting. I could have picked anyone really, and I went with Flavor Flav. So, but
Kanye West.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's another good example. That's another very good example. But I'm wondering if you guys can speak more about the medication theories, because I think that's a really big part of this, given that they have relevance to the legal battle.
Right. Well, we do know that she was checked into institutions for periods of time, especially during that 2008 period when she began this conservatorship just for all of her alleged mental breakdowns and whatnot. So there is some basis there, but as far as I can tell, we don't really know. A lot of it is speculation, and you can see what you see on the social media and the faraway looks, and you can hear what has happened in the past about being checked into mental institutions. And at some point, she's even said that she's checked herself in. But like we know, she's been under that conservatorship for the last 10 years. So a lot of it is speculation, but I personally wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
I think Jordan's absolutely right.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you hate to have to talk about it, but when you watch the way she presents herself on social media, it does just she seems off. And what do you think it is about how she seems off? I mean, she speaks kind of slowly. She says weird stuff like, I'm not in my gym right now. I burned it down. I mean, it's just not the way people speak. What do you think it is about these videos that make people think it's almost like a subtle cry for help? And how does that interact with the notion that her social media is also being monitored, right? So like she can't, if we know legally she's not allowed to post, on her own without going through, someone else, what does that tell us about what we're seeing on her social media accounts?
I mean, I think it draws a lot of sympathy from fans. A lot of these people have grown up with her as being.
I think it just starts from the Britney that everyone grew up with, the happy-go-lucky.
You're both saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're essentially both saying the same thing here, is that it's what we're seeing on social media right now. There's such a gulf between the Britney Spears of 2020 that we only see on social media, and the Britney Spears that everyone kind of grew up with in the late 90s and the early 2000s. This brings up, I think, an interesting question about our culture and the culture surrounding celebrities, particularly right now. This hashtag FreeBritney goes really, really deep. It goes really deep. Can you guys talk about in your research, because you covered this for us at the Federalist, can you talk about in your research what level of rabbit holes you encountered? Is this on Tumblr? Is this Instagram rabbit holes? Where are people going so deep on this, and where are they in communities? Where are they gathering online?
Well, I can speak to this. There people, I mean, being an iconic pop star for so long, you're going to build a following, but you're also going to build a subset of that following who is obsessed about you.
Right.
So there are actually Britney historians who have made it like their hobby to just,
hobby. Okay, they're hobby historians. They're not like, it's not like the Britney Spears historian at UCLA.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't if there were. But there are actually people who call themselves Britney historians who have done podcasts on the issue. I mean, there are podcast series that go for hours and hours and hours on this. And that's largely where I gathered most of my information from, on top of just the recent developments in the news.
Wow. So this stuff is just like on podcasts, and goes that I didn't realize Britney historians, people on social media, are referring to themselves as Britney. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but this is basically, this is coming from her obsessive fans, and it kind of made its way into the mainstream. Is that a fair way to say it, Jordan?
Yeah, it just has permeated pretty much every social media platform through various media things. And so whether it's trending on Twitter or social media accounts on Instagram dedicated to just collecting all of this information and speculation from other people, there's hordes and massive piles of information on pretty much every platform about this, just even under hashtag FreeBritney. And like Tristan mentioned, there's so many different subheadings of all of this movement that continue to carry this conspiracy theory.
Yeah. And, It's very interesting to me because I'm a little bit older than both of you. I guess like a lot older than Jordan, but I'm a little bit older than both of you, will say. So I remember, the late 90s when the Britney phenomena started, and I was like a little girl at the time. And so like Britney Spears was iconic. She was the girl next door, but she was also just like the coolest person in the world. And there, in the late 90s, her people were working really hard to make her seem kind of all American. And like I said, I keep using the phrase girl next door. There was like, she wrote a book with her mom, and there was just like an effort to make her seem very pure. And we can sort of trace the arc of Britney Spears' career to the, her VMA moments with Madonna, the Snake. There was a very deliberate shedding of that image as she aged. And now I think the fans her fan base, it's interesting because it's like when we talk about a politician's base, I think the same thing of the fan base, where there are casual fans and then there are obsessive fans. And it does seem like this is something that springs from Britney Spears's obsessive fan base. But it's just interesting to me because they seem to have really like, it does seem like the post VMA Britney is what resonates. And that's sort of like the iconic Britney is the like early aughts Britney, as opposed to like the 1999 Baby One More Time Britney.
I think you just touched on it. Yeah, I think you just touched on a trend that's really common among a lot of pop stars who start out really, really young, and then they grow and they mature and then they explore themselves. And then I think their work is largely a reflection of their own upbringing, and how they mature. I mean, we saw Justin Bieber go from this innocent teenage kid to like who he is today, and then we saw the same thing happen with Miley Cyrus. She was Hannah Montana, a Disney star, and then she released
came in like a
Wrecking
Ball.
Yeah. So it's just a common trend, I think, that we see among pop stars who grow up young, and their fan base matures with them, I think. I mean, Britney's fan base,
yeah, that's true.
they grew up with her, so as they matured with the music. So it kind of makes sense that they followed up until the end, where Britney hasn't really done any work in quite a few months or years now, because again, that incentive has just been zapped by this conservatorship. And I don't think we will see another Britney album or a Britney concert until this conservatorship is over, probably.
Why do you think that?
Because there's just no incentive for her to work right now. I mean, she gets a super small allowance for a multimillionaire. She has no control or say over who she works with, what her business contracts are. And I think Britney she's probably resisting new business deals right now. And I mean, she has done a lot of work in the last 12 years under this conservatorship, but I think Britney at this point, she's fed up with it. And I think now's her chance to finally kind of apply some pressure of her own to get out of this conservatorship. I mean, it's one reason why the attorney who was originally under this conservatorship with her father, it was her father and this attorney who were controlling her, the attorney stepped down from it. The attorney said, keeping Britney under this arrangement is going to do irreparable harm to the estate and Britney's own health. And so I think Britney now, I think it's probably part of this pushback.
Jordan, what's your earliest memory of Britney Spears?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I feel like kind of what Tristan is saying, like I did come later in the movement, but I was just able to hop right on, and like certain iconic songs like Toxic are still there. And I think even kids today know that song through a kind of this mobilization of like TikTok and social media. Like some of that stuff is just so iconic. It's stuck with people through the generations and hasn't really died out.
Is Toxic a TikTok meme?
There's a lot of TikToks that are made with that background noise. So yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I remember burning that to a CD-ROM to use as our middle school basketball warm-ups soundtrack.
Incredible.
So, yeah, it was a pretty cool time. So, but this is, to me, this, I think, sounds a lot like what goes on with Taylor Swift, but it's so different in the respect that, for our listeners, Taylor Swift is famous for littering her work, her social media, her songs with Easter eggs that basically carry subtle messages that really can only be decoded by obsessive fans. And that's partially why it's difficult as a journalist to critique Taylor Swift's work sometimes, because the depth of it is hard to actually sort of scratch at unless you come from a place where you were reading her Tumblr posts 5 years ago and you've analyzed every lyric of every song and you've been in this community with others who have done the same thing. And Taylor Swift is really good to her hardcore obsessive fans in that way. She enjoys having that relationship with them. But Britney Spears doesn't seem to be doing this on purpose. Right? Like when she comes in and says, I burned my gym down, do we think there's anything in her messaging that is deliberate? Or is it more just that what people are doing is scouring the internet and, people who have been involved in this case are being whistleblowers? It's not, is there any deliberate effort on Britney Spears' part that either of you has discerned to have a cry for help? I'm going to take that as a no, a resounding no.
I think generally speaking, when it comes to this place where she's at and she's maybe grasping for straws, you would fall back on that obsessive fan base, the people who have kind of been there through it all, for better or for worse. And so I think it could be deliberate. I'm not sure that it's something that she intentionally built up throughout the last 10 years, but it may be her grasping at straws moment where she's falling back on that fan base and is really just relying on the people who do pay attention to her to kind of propel this movement.
I think it's hard for her to really do it on purpose, just because every decision that she makes is under such control. So I think that the few subtle messages that she has been able to get out, like, and granted, it could be a conspiracy theory or coincidence, like the yellow blouse that she was told to wear if she needed help and was in trouble from the conservatorship. But ultimately, it's really hard to discern whether she's doing this on purpose, because every business decision she makes, everything in her music, there's so much tight control over it.
And I think that just adds to this element of mystery, which is going to continue to fuel #FreeBritney forward, is because it does, like, every time a yellow shirt thing happens, it makes the mystery deeper of how could she possibly be getting this stuff through whoever in the conservatorship is responsible for her social media and could censor it. So it just adds this element of, like, how is this possible? I want to ask you guys about stan culture, because I think from my perspective, that is one of the least appreciated elements of our pop culture right now. And when I say appreciated, I don't mean that we should be celebrating it. I mean, we should be understanding it, because it seems to have wrapped up a huge swath of Gen Z and of millennials into this very unhealthy culture. This is the most important part of this, is that, like, I don't begrudge anybody for, quote, standing Britney Spears, and standing is basically like hardcore fanning. I really don't begrudge anybody for standing Britney Spears, but it does seem like the stan community gathers in these spaces and then gets sort of obsessively involved in the lives of a celebrity they will never personally know. And then they attack other fan groups, and they attack any journalist who dissents from their narrative. It is a very obsessive culture. Can you speak to how this impacts the #FreeBritney movement?
I mean, I think that it completely mobilizes it. Without these obsessive fans, without these people who have devoted so much time and energy to this speculation, there would be no Free Britney movement. There would be no hashtag, there would be no traction, no trending. So I think it really does, like you said, point to this culture that maybe not everyone understands or wants to understand, but that maybe we should look into, is the fact that these fans have mobilized this movement that's gaining national press and giving kind of this footing when we're going into a week where there's a lot of legal ramifications on this issue. I'm not sure that would have happened without these obsessive fans, without these people who devoted all this time and effort to it.
Well, it's weird because I think it's a way for maybe disenfranchised people who realized that if they make enough noise on social media, they can influence coverage. Like they can influence journalists, they can influence what is talked about by publicists, and like they can really like be a part of something that makes a difference. Would you say that's part of this, Tristan?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about the parallels of how social media, even though it's not always entirely, in fact, it's very rarely representative of public opinion on an issue, it's still very influential. They're still very loud. Journalists live on Twitter, so they write about what happens on Twitter. So I'm thinking of more, just because I write more about politics than culture, I'm thinking of political parallels here where people on the left are the loudest voices, even though oftentimes they're largely in the minority. And we kind of see this with the Barbra Streisand effect, where our cancel culture sometimes starts to backfire. We saw this with the Goya boycott, where people on Twitter talked about boycotting Goya products because the CEO said something nice about Trump. And so on Twitter, Goya was suffering a ton of negative coverage, but we saw people across the country just flock to Goya products. So I'm kind of thinking of some of those parallels about how it, like Jordan said, it mobilizes people to influence coverage and to get eyes and attention on something that might need it, just like the Free Britney movement. Because I think if the bands weren't loud, then it would not have the coverage that it has today, and we would not see the revelations come out that we do see today.
One thing that's really interesting to me about Gen Z, and I think this also applies to younger millennials and maybe just millennials in general, is that the draw that we have to mystery, whether that is like true crime. If you look at like a YouTube show like BuzzFeed Unsolved, which I absolutely love, it's just enormously popular. And I think there's a draw to mystery among people our age because there's something very immediate about it. There's something sort of like, you know, we don't work in factories. Most of us don't build things. For the most part, we work behind computers. And I think there's something very tangible about thinking through the concept of a mystery, whether it's being a part of trying to figure out what's going on with Taylor Swift, whether it's being a part of, like figuring out what the heck is going on with Britney Spears. I have to think this is what explains why so many people, and I do really think it's a lot of people. I don't think this is like a tiny, barely like footnote. I think this is like a good amount of people. Why on earth would they care so much about what happens to an ultra famous celebrity that they will never personally know? And I think part of it is just that we're really like, if you look at our viewing habits, like it does seem like there's just something so appealing about the concept of mystery. I feel like I'm really sort of like intellectually wandering right now, but I also, that does seem to be, hitting at something. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think our culture has a general mistrust, or like our generation, Gen Z and younger millennials, has a general mistrust of just systems and things because we have this great access. We're the first generations to have this great access to information all of a sudden because of the internet. And we're seeing things that maybe past generations wouldn't have seen because it wasn't as readily available now. And so I think there's kind of this like power thing that comes with this access to the internet and access to social media and access to cultures and different groups that you haven't had before, that really propels this kind of, oh my gosh, I might be the one to discover what's going on here, and I might be the one to gather information to help this movement. And so I think it's really propelled by that mistrust and that access to information that really moves people forward in these conspiracy theories and mysteries.
What do you think, TJ?
Yeah, I think I would also add to that that I think often, music is a pretty spiritual thing for a lot of people. And I think with the rise of secularization especially, but even people who are religious, they still look at pop stars and singers as almost semi-religious beings, especially when they've grown up for them for so long, and they listen to them on their regular, just on a daily, in their daily routine. They listen to these people every day, every week. They go to the shows, they go to the concerts, they spend tons of money on it. These people are, I mean, very famous people end up being almost like religious figures to them. And so I think that's part of where this fascination comes from.
Yeah, I also think so. That gets another really important point, I think, about stan culture. And again, I say that this is underappreciated because I really think people don't realize how much time and energy and how big a part of so many people, so many young people's lives it is. And you guys might know if I'm overstating that, but it does really seem like it's a lot of people in the, I would say like 14 to 22, 23-year-old demographic get wrapped up in these fan cultures, which again, like there's to some extent, this is not unprecedented. I mean, there have always been fan clubs. I remember back in the early aughts, the forums, and there were literal fan clubs, and like the concept of like fan fiction goes back to like Star Trek and probably even before that. So this is not entirely unprecedented, but it does seem like mobilizing in these online communities, the way that it's accelerated in the era of social media also is coinciding with an era when actual communities locally are eroding. And I really am tempted to believe that these things are connected, that young people seek out these intense, almost ambient communities because they have them on their phones wherever they go online, because it's something that they're missing. And what community used to be civic life, so it used to be church, it used to be, of course we'll use the bowling example, but it used to be all of these different things, and now it's freaking out about like Beyonce on Twitter. Do you guys think that this is these areas are connected? All of us come from the middle of the country, and I have to think that there's something to that.
I need to take the pause real quick to plug my computer in real quick, just because it's about to die.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people search and a lot of people find when it comes to online communities. And so anything that may be lacking in a local community, they can find online with a quick Google search. I kind of wonder though if it's not the opposite effect, kind of like you're mentioning, where because this social capital has depleted in so many different local communities, because there's this lack of social interaction compared to the 1950s or so, is that fueling these obsessive, tendencies to jump on board with these things that maybe people aren't even that interested in, but just feel like they're a part of. They crave that culture and they crave that involvement, and so they become invested in these things instead of invested in, like you were saying, civic engagement or something locally.
Tristan?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I think fandom really provides communities that people can flock to, especially as we see the erosion of community centers nationwide. I mean, people just aren't congregating in these collective spheres anymore like we used to 50 years ago. Communities are being hollowed out, society is changing, we're online now more than ever. And I think fandom and building those nationwide communities really just give people something to flock to, because I think at the end of the day, we're social people, and even if it's online, we'll flock to some type of community.
Yeah, and it reminds me of what I see from a lot of Trump supporters on social media. I think they find community there, and this is sort of like a fringy offshoot of that. But all of this does sound a lot like QAnon, and QAnon is something that has pulled in like a lot of just totally normal people, because I think there's just something like electrifying and energizing about finding, about the notion that these clues are coming. Like it's obviously intriguing, but on top of that, it also is like being a part of something big and important and bigger than yourself with these other people who you get to know and you interact with all of the time, and you're part of something that has like national import. So I think there's something very attractive about that in this day and age.
I think you're right. And I think music especially is really susceptible to what you just described, because music throughout human history has always brought people together. It has always been really at the heart of communities. I mean, you go to church, what do you do in church? Half the time you sing. I mean, every culture, every historic society has had music really be a central part of it. And I mean, because when you think about it, music energizes us. It makes us want to move. It makes us want to do things. It kind of tickles some of the senses. And I think that music is especially susceptible to bringing people together in that way.
Yeah. This is my question for you guys. I'm putting you both on the spot. After all of your research, what do you think is going on with Britney Spears? What is your best guess at what is actually going on with Britney Spears?
I think she's getting fed up. I think that this has been going on for 10 years. Like Tristan mentioned earlier, attorneys have quit on the case citing her health and her safety. Different people have jumped on board saying, you know, she's not okay, this isn't okay. And she did end all of her deals, her career stuff recently. So I think she's getting fed up. I think she's starting to realize that the extent of this conservatorship is gone on far too long, has far overreached its value and needs to be ended. And so I think that's why we're seeing these pop-ups of most recent legal cases to kind of renegotiate this conservatorship and see what's going on. I'm not sure, I can't really speak to if she's being medicated or any of that part of the theory, but I do believe that, you know, I think her and people backing her are ready to see a change.
What do you think, Tristan?
I think Jordan's exactly right. I think someone who is as productive as Britney Spears has been in the last 12 years at that age probably doesn't need to be in a conservatorship. There probably are things that we don't know, but again, Britney, and like even under this conservatorship, has gone on 4 world tours. She's done a Vegas residency, which are grueling, by the way. Released multiple albums, been on major shows. I mean, it's very bizarre for someone in her late 20s and early 30s to be under conservatorship when someone like Kanye West is not. So I think Jordan's right. I think Britney's fed up with it and she's trying to apply pressure to finally get out of it. And I think we could probably see by the end of next week something happen good for Britney here.
Oh, optimism. Well, you know, it's interesting because obviously something is wrong. It does seem like that's, you know, the gym video alone is, you know, this is not how a healthy person communicates. And I think the arc of Britney Spears' career is a really important and fascinating one to American pop culture, especially around the turn of the millennium. This is somebody who, as Tristan explained, and as Jordan spoke to as well, started as this kind of like virginal lily white girl next door who also, you know, had that kind of American sex appeal in the, like some of those music videos and her other various appearances that took it and, you know, sort of shed that image and went full like sex appeal, has produced a lot of good pop music, is a likable person, and now does seem to be in trouble. But when we talk about Free Britney, what's interesting is that, as Tristan just mentioned, this could be a positive, like she could be released from this arrangement and she could be, you know, hopefully that would be a beneficial thing for her if it were to happen. But if that comes to fruition, it would be fame that hurt her and fame that ultimately saved her. So this is an interesting story, and I should say at least helped save her. This is an interesting story, and I hope we didn't get too into the pop cultural weeds for our more political listeners, but I do think it's important every once in a while to pause and reflect on some of these people who do have massive influence over our culture, and sort of look at what's happening downstream of their celebrity with their fans, their fan bases, and how they're impacting things on a broader level. So appreciate both of you guys taking the time to chat this afternoon.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Emily.
I feel like Tristan has a troll account, like a Free Britney troll account that he uses.
It's Pierre Delicto.
Well, this has been another edition of the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky. They're Tristan Justice and Jordan Davidson. You can follow us all on Twitter. You can email the show at radio@thefederalist.com. Until next time, be lovers of freedom and anxious for the fray.